that are 85 years of age or older. That represents a 41% increase since the 2000 census. Further, 52% of the borough's total population in 2015 is 55 years of age or older. So we have a decrease in total population, a decrease in the number of school-age children, and a population which is clearly aging in the borough of Girt. It was also noted in the master plan under the demographic characteristics that there are 742 households in the borough, and 75% of these households consist of 1 and 2 persons. The average household size in the community for all units is 2.3 persons per household. While there are 1,281 total household units in the borough, and 96.3% of all of those households reside in single-family detached dwelling units. Currently, there is no zoning for senior housing in the borough, nor is there any existing senior housing in the borough. Clearly, with the aging population, there is a documented need for senior housing per the borough's 2018 master plan reexamination report. It notes again that 52% of the population is 55 years of age or older, and that there is a 41% increase in the population 85 years of age or older. Our suggested proposal to the council in the letter of February 2019 is an attempt to satisfy the needs and desires of the longtime residents of the community. Clearly, it's our opinion that many of these residents would like to downsize from their single-family home so that they could stay and live in the community of Girt. They want to remain involved with their family, their friends, their church, and their community organizations, but there is no senior housing in the community. Having said all of that, I would submit to the council, as stated in my letter, that from a planning perspective, we feel the 2 sit-tar properties, which I identified by block and lot, in our opinion, are ideal locations for needed senior housing. The consolidation of the smaller lots in both the north and south parcels, raising of the non-conforming structures thereon, would eliminate numerous existing zoning nonconformities and create 2 large, oversized parcels for the commercial zone. Each of these properties would have in excess of twice the required lot area for the zoning district at 16,000 and 16,500 square feet, and would have twice the required lot frontage for the zoning district in the commercial zone as set forth by your current ordinance. So essentially, we would consolidate the properties, getting rid of the smaller lots. The development of the properties for senior housing would not permit access from Washington Boulevard to either of these parcels, and we felt that's important because it would retain all of the existing on-street parking along both the northerly and southerly side of Washington Boulevard. I would note that our plan would be fully compliant with respect to the required number of parking spaces as specified by ordinance, and parking would be provided for the 16 units on each site as required by law. I would also submit to the council that our plan as proposed would clearly have less of an impact than that which would be permitted if the property were to develop under your current zoning. As the board is aware, single-family homes are not permitted in the commercial zone. The commercial zone, by right, allows retail, restaurants, and other commercial units on the first floor with apartments above. We submit the plan we are proposing with 32 senior citizen units for individuals of 55 years of age or older, would have less site activity at both locations, less impact on the adjoining property owners, less traffic, less noise, and less lighting than the commercial and retail uses permitted by right at this location. I would also submit to you that the senior housing at these locations would also support and complement the existing commercial establishments in the balance of the zone along Washington Boulevard. Finally, again, we are not, as I stated earlier, seeking a zone change or a change of zone. We are simply requesting an amendment to the existing commercial zone to permit senior housing as a conditionally permitted use. As part of my letter to the board dated February of this year, on page 4, I specifically offered for the purpose of conversation and discussion and to initiate conversation and discussion with the council, suggested amendments to your zoning ordinance to accomplish the goal of creating a conditional use for senior housing. And again, there would be enhanced requirements for senior housing in this zone district. What do I mean when I say that? As you're aware, at the current time, permitted uses can be built on properties in the commercial zone with a lot size of 7,500 square feet and a lot width of 50 feet. We are proposing, as part of the conditional use standards for senior housing, that the minimum lot size for senior housing must be at least 15,000 square feet, which is twice the required lot size for other uses in the zone. And the minimum lot width would have to be 100 feet, which is double the permitted lot size, which is double the permitted required lot width in the commercial zoning district. We're also suggesting that one of the conditional use standards specifically specify that wherever possible and practical, vehicular access to Washington Boulevard and County Road shall be prohibited in order to preserve existing on-street parking along the Washington Boulevard frontage. We are suggesting that vehicular access shall be provided to adjoining streets, which would be Fifth Avenue or Girt Avenue, where individuals may seek to consolidate properties. And finally, we're suggesting that the council add a definition for senior housing, which is consistent with the definition for senior housing promulgated by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, which simply states that senior housing shall mean housing designed for and occupied by at least one person 55 years of age or older. I think that basically covers my presentation. I would note that I took the time to research, for the benefit of the council, what the council might anticipate in terms of the number of individuals of 55 years of age or older who would reside in these units. And there is a study conducted by Rutgers University Center for Urban Policy Research that clearly shows, and that study just came out in 2018, that based upon the fact that these units would be occupied by individuals 55 years of age or older, or senior citizens, one would expect at approximately 1.4 persons per dwelling unit. So having 32 dwelling units, 16 dwelling units, 8 and 8, we would anticipate that they would probably be occupied by approximately 24 individuals. As many of the units occupied would probably be by widows or widowers. That, I think, quickly and succinctly outlines my presentation to the council. I know you all have a copy of the February 15th letter, and if you have any questions regarding the letter or any of my testimony, I'd be glad to answer any questions and address that at this time.
Open it up to questions from the council.
Do you happen to have a copy of the Rutgers study?
Yes,
today?
yeah, I have, what I did is, I went online, because I anticipated that, and copied the cover page of the report and the section that gives the anticipated population it's for 2-bedroom units that exceed a median income of $150,000. And that's the attachment there. If you look on the left-hand side of what I just gave you, and I'm sure I can get a full copy of this report to your board planner, and I suspect she may already have that. It's the section, it says 5 to 49 units, because they were proposing 16 units. They would be rental and 2-bedroom, and I use the figures for above median or $185,000. And if you go through those numbers, you can get a blended, they give you a figure for total persons if they're not senior units, and then there's a breakdown across the top where they have people 55 to 64, 65 to 74, and 75 above, that you would anticipate would be generated by these types of units. And this report basically took 4 years to complete. That's why you'll see at the top of the table that I gave you, this is for newer housing units built between the year 2000 and the year 2016. And the information that completes these numbers was collected between 2012 and 2016. So these individuals did the original report. It was entitled the Fiscal Impact Analysis of Housing in the State of New Jersey, and that was done in the, I'm going from memory, but it probably was the early 80s. And then they just redid it last year. In fact, it's dated November 2018.
One other question in reference to this study. Where was the study held? What areas? Were they urban? Were they suburban?
All of New Jersey. All
So
of
all
New
of
Jersey.
New Jersey
Yes, and it
encompassed.
by a county, by town and county by county basis.
Thank you very much.
I mean, being realistic, if you're saying 1 point something per household, you know.
For
we all-
senior housing.
Senior housing.
Yes.
Let's be honest, we live at the beach, people come to us, I think that's gonna be a low number, there's no doubt.
I'm talking about full-time residents now.
Okay.
You know, again, these are all two-bedroom units. Like all of us that live in town, and I live in town, we have visitors from time to time, so I'm sure these individuals would have visitors and family members too from time to time.
Mr. McSweeney, you had indicated that this would be a conditional use throughout the zone. You also said that access would be limited or...
Well, I'm suggesting that access be limited to streets other than Washington Boulevard. Let's be honest here. The county's not going to allow access on Washington Boulevard, County Road.
Okay, I guess where I'm going,
New access. Anyone that has it now, of course.
what do you see happening over time to the downtown area of town if this is approved?
That's a very fair question. I think what we're proposing here with the types of buildings that we're proposing creates a new vision for the town. As you know, there's been a number of retail operations in the community, and I've lived in the community since 2004, that have come and gone. There are a number of vacancies in existing buildings right now, some of which have been vacant for in excess of 2 years. I think from a planning standpoint, you have to say to yourself, what is the vision for our town? I really don't see Girt with the small retail commercial community that it has competing with the likes of a Spring Lake or Manasquan or Point Pleasant because of its smallness. Much of the downtown area right now is made up of small offices. There's the two restaurants, there's the post office, the bank we used to have, the bank left. There's two other eateries, Ray's Cafe and Joe Leone's, and there's a liquor store. But the balance of the southerly side of Washington Boulevard, it consists of smaller buildings. There's one new building going up, which I understand would be offices, but there's other offices there now that are vacant, so. It's not in my opinion, a magnet for retail shopping. It's not a place where retail uses, in my opinion, would seek to locate because of the small amount of foot traffic and the downtown area that it is.
So over time, you sort of see the, I'll call it the central business district of town sort of being absorbed into, basically an apartment group of.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. Clearly, the two restaurants that are there seem very successful and thriving. I'm talking about Fratello's and Rod's. Joe Leone seems to do very, very well. The liquor store does well. But I think once you get past that, if you look at the permitted use list for the commercial zone, all the permitted uses are already there. There's the restaurant uses, small retail uses. Greg's has been there forever. There's been a couple of coffee shops on the property that we're discussing right now that have come and gone. One time there was a barber there. There's a small ice cream place across the street, which is a seasonal use, but not a year-round use. Never would, in current condition, would be a year-round use, so.
Well, I appreciate that, and could you then contrast the existing zone permits retail on the first floor and residential on
The
the
existing
second floor?
zone would permit us to construct by right, no variances, buildings complying with the ordinance in terms of front, rear, and side yard setback and on-site parking, which would have retail or restaurants on the first floor and 4 apartments above on each site, based upon the size of the property. So by right, we could build 4 apartments on the second floor on each site for families, not age restricted. And the first floor of each site could be for offices, retail, restaurant uses, and the few other uses that are listed in your permitted use list in the zoning district.
Okay.
So essentially, while, in my opinion, we're asking for 8 units on each site, where 4 family units are permitted by right. So really, we're asking for the 4 units on the bottom and all of them to be senior units. They would be deed restricted, and we have to file the required papers with the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs with bylaws, covenants, and agreements anytime you do senior housing.
These would be purely rental units, not
Yes,
condominiums?
yes.
And I guess I like the idea of the senior units. I think people in town would like to stay in town instead of having to move out as they age. But I guess I'm still concerned. I mean, your vision is like, we're gonna lose the downtown. And not that, you can't keep something that doesn't work. I'm with you there, but.
I think we're seeing that a little bit. Again, I've lived in town about 16 years now, and I've seen a number of things come and go. And as a planner, I said to myself, what is going to locate there? Someone looking.
I was going to ask you what was going to locate on the retail shops if you did
I don't know.
an as-of-right building.
You know what? I don't know. Probably a restaurant.
Mhm.
Some kind of eating establishment, maybe not a high-scale eating establishment, but realistically, I think you're looking at eating establishments on maybe one or both sites. From a retail standpoint, a pure shopping standpoint, why would someone locate here as opposed to Point Pleasant, Manasquan, Spring Lake, or the Route 35 corridor, just in terms of the volume of traffic that it experienced, both vehicular and foot traffic.
And one final thing, did you address parking in front of you maintain the existing space?
shut off your telephones?
Along Washington? And,
Yes.
what about the parking for the units? Where is that handled by the garages? What's anticipated?
We would have on-site parking as required by ordinance. We envision, the ordinance requires 2 spaces per unit, even though it's senior housing, and I doubt they'd be used, but we would provide at least 16 on-site parking spaces on-site, paid parking spaces with required access.
Okay, they would be surface parking, obviously.
Correct.
And
Yes, they would.
There would be no garages.
At this point in time, we don't envision garages. I mean, the buildings would have elevators, because they're senior units, we have to have elevators to meet, and there's other ADA requirements we have to meet, which is different from the previous building.
Thank you very much.
It's early on, we don't have the definitive plan yet, but based upon the plans that we previously completed, we know we can get compliant parking, all compliant setback, meet the building height, and meet the parking standards.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. McSweeney, is there a basement in these buildings? Will there be storage units for the apartments, or?
There may be, I'm not sure yet, because we have not completed borings and whatnot to see what the depth of groundwater is, if we can put a basement in. If the borings permit us to have a basement, we'd like to have a basement. Whether it's, its use would probably be more storage than anything else. I guess the other question I think someone asked is, what's the size of the units? The minimum unit would be 1,200 square feet, and they would all be 2-bedroom units.
I have a lot of questions, but my intent tonight was to have Mr. Sitar present to the public his plan so that the public could hear at least his side of what he's proposing, and hear, I guess, some solid information. I was hoping that we would hear some objective information. I've seen emails going around that there were going to be 80-plus people in these 16 units, is it?
Yes.
And we've heard the presenter with an entirely different number. So my intent tonight, because we're not going to make a decision tonight, is to let the public hear from this side of what they're proposing. I think the proper direction after this, from a land use standpoint, is to refer this to the planning board and ask them, Mr. Sitar, to present to the planning board, and the planning board give us a recommendation. I think we'd have to have their involvement one way or the other.
That certainly is an option. All land use modifications begin by way of an ordinance that is introduced by the governing body, and any land use development, such as suggested here, in between the first and second reading, is referred to the land use board, planning board, for their input. They have a certain amount of time to reply to the governing body, and then the governing body would have its second hearing, second reading of the ordinance, which would be a public hearing, and the public could participate, and then they would decide. The required vote would depend on a recommendation from the planning board. If they recommended approval, it would just be a majority of council. If they did not recommend approval and the council wanted to vote in the affirmative, there's an affirmative required vote of a majority of council, and specific reasons would have to be placed on the record as to why they oppose the recommendations of the planning board. But as Councilman Excel has suggested, that even prior to the borough considering whether or not to introduce an ordinance, that the applicant or the proponent go to the planning board and make their suggestions, and the planning board make a recommendation to the governing body. That's an alternative.
That would be my choice.
I certainly feel that it should go to the planning board too for review after having just completed a master plan review. All the data is fresh and everything much more familiar to comment back to us. But I would certainly welcome, I think, public hearing, we should
I have just a couple of minor questions. You said the minimum size was 1,200 square feet?
Speak up a little bit louder, I'm afraid you
Okay.
can't hear too much back.
I'm sorry. You mentioned the minimum size was 1,200 square feet. What's the maximum size for a two-bedroom?
I don't know. I don't have that information.
My second question just has to do with, you said elevators. Do you also plan on handicapped parking spots?
Yes, yes.
All right. What we're gonna do, from this point, unless the council has any more questions.
No,
I'm sorry.
no, I just, for the public's own knowledge, the zoning committee met with, Mr. Sitar and his
Right.
planner, recently, so it doesn't look like we have any questions. We, we talked to him for quite a while. So, yeah, we definitely want to hear from the public.
The Councilman Anthony might have a question.
Yes, thank you. Mr. McSweeney, other than the senior title of this complex that we're proposing this evening, what is different than what was proposed to the planning board 2 times prior to this? Is there a difference in the concept, in the,
Well, yes, the major difference is these are exclusively units for senior citizens. The previous plan envisioned just market rate housing.
okay, so,
And the fact that in as much as these would be units only for seniors 55 years of age or older, just the impact on the property in terms of the number of people and vehicles and everything else. Yes.
I happened to bring up in a couple of council meetings, and some people in the audience and the council had heard me that 55 can actually be a parent of children, small children. And I'm a school nurse, I love children, I have a son myself. I question whether or not an elderly person, which you're trying to propose these units to be housing, would appreciate families with technically a 55-year-old, one person out of the household that you're mentioning, having children.
Children would
And
not be
small-
permitted to live in these units.
I
School-
didn't hear that in your presentation, so
Well,
that's why I'm
The only
clarifying.
people who could reside in these units would be individuals 55 years of age or older. And that's by the deed restrictions, covenants, and agreements. There is one exception that comes to mind. There may be more than one, but the one exception of a special age child, special needs child of the age of over 18 may be permitted, if he or she is related to the owner.
Thank you.
Well, if 2 people live in the unit, they both have to be over 55?
I believe one has to be 55 years of age, yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
So you wanna see the building? Mr. Sitar, can we see the, we see the
I
building?
wonder if we could maybe show the building to, we can see it, but the others can't.
They would be sister buildings, meaning the buildings would be across from each other and look the same, similar looking as.
I just saying, the entranceway is, I guess it'd be one in the front, one in the back, in the middle of the building?
Correct.
Back the idea. And would people, how do you discourage people from taking the parking spaces on Washington?
We proposed to the planning board
Excuse me, Mr. Sitar, I don't know if the people in the back can hear you. I don't know if you would like to be
If
able
I might answer the question, the proposal is for a gated entrance to the parking that are fob or card operated.
But I guess with there's an entrance in the middle of the building on
Yes,
Washington,
yeah.
correct? So, and there would be.
Oh, I see your question. Nothing, just like any, just the way it is now for any of the uses along Washington Boulevard. Yeah, they may
Foot
use
traffic.
spaces.
The front end line would be foot traffic.
was a space there.
I think you're talking about the angled spaces that are there.
Correct, yeah.
May they park there? Yeah, they could, just like, they park for.
Well, they
all
do
the
now,
other
and they
uses,
park
yeah.
on Fifth. I mean, I'm really just kind of curious. if
Parking, there's only parking on one side of Fifth, but now.
Now.
And that's the easterly side of Fifth between Washington Boulevard and Crescent. On the westerly side, parking is prohibited.
Thank you.
What I'm gonna do right now is, I'm going to open it up to public comment. We have in our, rules, please keep your comments to 4 minutes, because we have a lot to do tonight. So I would welcome anyone who would like to come up. Let me call on you first, but you're up there, so.
My name is Edward Liston. I'm an attorney from Toms River, New Jersey, and I represented a group of homeowners who and say that this is a request for rezoning because single apartment units without any commercial on the property is not a permitted use. And we know that because in his last 2 attempts to do the same project without an age restriction, Mr. Sitar had to apply for a use variance. And in both times, he was denied by the planning board. And it went to court, and the planning board was ultimately upheld. So that's where we are right now. Now, he has a perfect right to make a presentation to you folks, because you have the power to zone. However, in the Cox book, which those of us who do land use are very familiar with, the recommendation is as follows. Either the governing body or the planning board can consider these requests. From a planning standpoint, however, it would be best to go to the planning board, since it is the most knowledgeable about the master plan and the reasoning which went into the current zoning. All zoning ordinances ultimately have to be referred to the planning board. So I applaud you for making, I guess someone made a recommendation that you not vote on this, that this go to the planning board, let the planning board take a look at it first. That's the proper way. That's what Cox talks about. I would also point out to you that in a case like this, where you have a single landowner with very limited land ownings or holdings, asking to have this sort of thing, this sort of zone change made, you run the risk of spot zoning. Here's what Cox says about that in the same section. One issue which will have to be determined by whichever body hears the matter is whether or not the change would amount to spot zoning. This issue will most frequently arise where only one landowner applies for the change and his holdings are not very large. Hello? Sounds like Mr. Sitar's holdings. He's failed twice with a variance, now he's asking for rezoning. I suspect ultimately the fight will be whether it's spot zoning or not. Let me just make one other point, because I think you may want to suggest this to the planning board. Cox points out in the same section that a growing number of municipalities have adopted ordinances that do 2 things. Number 1, they require that any request for zoning change automatically goes to the planning board before you guys even vote. Secondly, the ordinance requires, since the planning board is going to have to spend money for its planner, its engineer, for its attorney in reviewing this, comparing it to the master plan, that there should be fees and an escrow for the professional fees that are going to be generated to the taxpayers if you don't have a methodology to get it from the applicant. So I think in this case, before the planning board considers this, you may want to consider a new ordinance in Girt, which requires that all requests for rezoning go to the planning board directly, and that the planning board is authorized to charge fees and to set up escrows so the public isn't burdened, the taxpayers aren't burdened with what amounts to a landowner taking a free shot at a rezone. I think that's important.
Liston, could I interrupt you for a second? Yeah. We actually have a memorandum for our borough engineer, Mr. Rockian, that back in March, that their assessment is that this is not spot zoning.
Well-
And that, let me finish up if I could, and sure you can get a copy of it via Oprah. That based on what you just said about Cox, that Mr. Sitar owns approximately 14.7% of the land in the 2ECC zone. So that's a pretty good percentage. So just for the record.
It is, but it's all he owns.
Say it?
And it's all he owns, and it's the only property which is so configured, size-wise, that it would qualify for his conditional use size.
Not true.
That, to me, is rezoning. But that's for ultimately the planning board
Right.
to decide.
Right.
And if whoever is aggrieved on that, it's for the courts to decide.
Correct.
And I can tell you that my clients, as well as Mr. Sitar, know where the courthouse door is, and they know what they want. Finally, I think there was a suggestion here, or an inference, that Girt has a lot of seniors who would like to stay in Girt but want to sell their homes. That may be true, but you can't discriminate against anyone coming in and renting an apartment in Girt as long as they qualify by age. So this isn't going to be set aside for Girt residents. Anybody can come in here and rent these apartments, otherwise it would be discrimination against the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Liston.
Thank you.
Your time is up.
Would anyone else like to make a comment? Ms. Schobel? Mrs. Schobel?
Yeah, anybody, or, go ahead.
No, I picked you. I like you, come on up.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Ann Schobel, and I too have lived in town for quite a while, since 1993. And like Mr. Sitar and Mr. McSweeney,
Yeah.
I'm not that fond of kids either. I really don't like them. Unfortunately, I have 4 of them. Now, wait a minute, with my 4, we have 6 cars in my driveway. And that's not counting the 2 cars that my husband is working on. So we have 6 cars. Each child has a boyfriend and girlfriend. So I'm serious. And anybody who lives across the street from me, you guys know, my house is always littered with cars. So that's 4, 6, another 10, 11. My parents live on Neptune. They are the seniors you're talking about, 89 and 90. That my siblings come down. They each have 5 children, so that's 5. And oddly enough, my sister and her husband come down in 2 separate cars, so that's 7 cars. Usually on the weekends, there's 11 cars on Neptune, and they're all from the Critchley family. Now, they live on Retirement Row, so everybody there is a senior. The Wheats have grandchildren, the Foss have grandchildren. We could go on, but that's not what I wanted to say. I want to say, like, and I'm a little nervous, I apologize, but if I may, the request to change the conditional use permit on Washington is right in the center of Girt. Once again, it has been put forth to the council. This request to build several multifamily dwelling unit apartment buildings on land not otherwise permitted within the particular zoning district has been twice denied by the planning board and also rejected after an appeal. I was a kindergarten teacher, 1, 2, 3. So 3 times it was denied, correct? 3 times. Twice by the planning board and once by the appeal. There is a reason this proposal has been denied 3 times. Number 1, the master plan for Girt on page 35, and you folks can Google it, on page 35 clearly states the intent to foster a prosperous commercial district. This property is in the heart of Girt. It's zoned for business. A high-density multifamily apartment would significantly decrease businesses yet increase traffic. As I told you, I counted all the cars. Limited parking would harm existing businesses until they too decide to cash out and apply for a change to the zoning laws. So pretty soon, we're gonna have Memorial Drive with a lot of apartment buildings. If this request is allowed, it will enable all the other property owners to follow suit, and the downtown of Girt would be significantly altered. The entrance into town would look like a corridor of apartments. Currently is for mixed use. I suggest that the retail business on the first level and living space on the second, just as it is zoned. The owner bought this property knowing the zoning rules. So I think if the person knew the zoning, Mr. Sitar knows the zoning rules, then he bought the property knowing what they are. Now, if the property is able to change, could I have my family move in? I know my 4 kids aren't moving out anytime soon, so perhaps I can change the zoning laws just a little bit down, just 2 blocks down. So, anyway, and there was just one other question if I had for Mr. McSweeney. Are these going to be affordable housing units? Most seniors are on fixed incomes, as you know, and I'm wondering, will these be considered affordable housing units?
No.
No? Thanks. And then one other question I had. You mentioned two different numbers, 32 units and 16. I believe you corrected yourself, correct? It was 16 units?
That's correct, 16 units.
16 units. So I did the math, 16, if each of those 16 units had 4 cars, 6 cars on a given weekend, that's 96 cars. If each, just like my family, we have 6 cars. So if each of them had 6 cars, 96 cars coming in and out of Washington Boulevard. So anyway, there were a few others, but I'm sorry, I was writing down as we were going. And families are not allowed, correct? We don't want families, we only want older people. Again, I'm not trying to be facetious, I just want to understand. But anyway, that's it, folks. I'm sorry, I was a little nervous, but I like Girt. I bought my house. I'm very close to the property. I like how it is now. I liked how it is zoned now, and I hope that the planning board will consider what they chose to do just last June. They wrote up a master plan. Please follow the master plan. That's it.
Would anyone else like to speak? Mr. Jennings.
Hey, I'm Tom Jennings, 501 Trenton Boulevard. I'm adjacent to one of the properties. Until Mr. McSweeney pointed it out, I didn't know we were turning into a retirement town, but I guess, based on the stats, we are. The reference that this is going to be for Girt residents, to Mr. Lipton's point, is impossible. That's discriminatory. You can't do that. So it's going to be a warm body and a check that clears. The fact that he said we were going to run, as if he was doing the town a favor, the parking was going to come out on 5th Avenue, that was mandated by the county. That was not something that the Sitar group has come up with. I've been here renting I've owned since 2000. I've rented long before that. No conversation, in any beach conversation, bar conversation, has anybody ever said, I wish I could retire in downtown Girt. You go to Fairway Mews, you go to Four Seasons, if you need assisted living, go up to Tinton Falls. I just don't see us becoming a retirement haven, nor do I want downtown to turn into that. And if Mr. Sitar stays within the regulations, the zoning, the current zoning, he has 8 apartments that he can make available for people in Girt that are looking to retire. Okay, I came into Girt 18 years ago, and I knew I was buying next to commercial. I read what the rules were, and I was comfortable with the rules. Now, with all the improvements I've done on my home, the commercial property is being proposed to change the rules for one individual. don't see what it does for Girt. The project got voted down 8-0, 8-0, and then at the county level. So 3 times, as Mary Ann pointed out. I work within the rules. I think the history suggests that, well, the history is, this project, other than the age restriction, is basically the same project. You know, the numbers, I guess you can fool with the numbers, the number of bedrooms, 32 bedrooms. I can't imagine that that's not gonna turn into spillover parking. You could, you know, that's, you know, you do the math, but that comes out to about 2% of the population based on Mr. McSweeney's numbers. It's gonna be on 2 corners of Girt. It just seems a little bit of overkill for something where your master plan and your zoning says you wanna keep low density. Okay, so if I'm a landlord in Girt, I think every landlord's gonna go back to the drawing board and re-examine their property. It's not only now, it's 20 years from now, it's 30 years from now. The decision you make here is gonna go for a long, long time. And as Mr. Liston pointed out, I don't understand exactly what spot zoning means, but I think I can figure it out. You start one, it could cause some sort of domino effect. So I think every landlord goes back and, you know, starts re-examining their property. I also think that it sends a terrible message just generally to developers that Girt, you know, you might be able to come into Girt, be a landlord, and maybe bend the rules a little bit. I don't know, just my thoughts. I would hope that you consider your job to stick with the existing zoning laws without changing too much. Our master plan kind of spells it out, and I'm just gonna, I mean, I'm sure everybody's gonna start quoting the master plan, but in this re-examination, which everybody can find online, it says, first, this is for economic development in downtown. First floor permitted uses in commercial districts should ensure that uses allowed at ground level promote vibrant day, evening, and weekend foot traffic. I don't see a retirement or an age-restricted apartment doing that. The other part is based on limitations. To preserve the existing primary commercial concentration in the borough and permit such uses that meet the daily and otherwise and other convenient needs of the borough within the zoning district area designated in order to be compatible with the overall low-density residential character of the borough. Again, I don't see how this does that. That's our master plan. That's the re-examination as of, no dates on this.
June 2018.
2018? Okay. So just generally and without the vision, Mr. McSweeney wasn't able to give us a good vision, but I don't want the downtown to turn into a retirement row. I mean, we have plenty of activity down there right now. We've got good services down there. The vision of some retirement row is just not the way we should go, in my opinion. Seniors can find plenty of places to go. As I said, Fairway Muse, Four Seasons, go up to Tinton Falls for assisted living if you need it, but this is not what the town needs. And if there are some people who need to retire, you're gonna have 8 apartments available if you stay within the zone. To 16, I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense. It serves the purpose of one individual and his wallet, and I don't see it serving the community overall.
Would anyone else like to address the council?
Michael Keefe. I reside on the corner of Crescent Parkway and Fifth Avenue. If you live in the shadow of the threat of this development, as I had for the last 12 or 13 years, there's a certain fatigue that sets in with this. As Mary Ann said, this has been denied numerous times. It's been appealed, I believe, to the county level, then the appellate division. I don't know if it went beyond that, I think it did, could be wrong. But here we are again. It's essentially the same application. There's a 55 and older element, which I think is obviously different. I actually think in my comments at past meetings, I suggested a 55 and older component, but not with this type of density, and not with the deprivation of the retail and the commercial on the first floor. And I live, you know, I'm the guy, as Mr. McSweeney said, we're gonna have our ingress and egress off of Washington. That means it's gonna happen right in front of my house, basically. So I'm the guy that's willing to take my chances on a building that satisfies the zoning ordinance. Building I like to point to is Christopher Rice, the architect. He bought a lot, he put up a building with 2 retail pods, he occupies one of them, and 2 nice apartments upstairs. It's a compliment to Girt. All the talk about occupancy, there was talk, and this council member, I don't know his name, at the end there, mentioned about emails about 80 persons. That came because there was testimony during the initial hearings that was the maximum occupancy for these 2 properties. I don't know what the maximum occupancy is going to be under the new presentation, but we all know Girt is a magnet for people. So the Rutgers University study that says 1.4 per unit, which might apply in somewhere like Wall Township or Tenafly or some other community as diverse as New Jersey is, people come down here because we happen to have a big ocean a couple blocks away from this development, and it's a nice place to go in the summer. So the 1.4, I think, explodes in the summertime. And I think I just believe we're talking about too much density. Tom Jennings mentioned 2%, I think that's low. If the number is 80, and you multiply, if you divide that into our population, that's a 4.5% population increase on one intersection. In New York City, that would be 500,000 people on one intersection. Okay? I came down here to get away from this. I'm born and raised in New Brunswick. New Brunswick had a 70% rental to homeownership ratio. 70% rental versus 30% homeownership. I saw the city fall apart. One of the reasons I moved down here to raise a family. It got worse and worse. You don't own a property, you're not vested in it, you don't take care of it. Last thing I want to say is there's always that threat that's been made about restaurants, right? Maybe the day after or the week after the first denial, there was a neon sign that went on the property that is now the antique shop. And it said open, and it was on all day long and all night. And I know because I get up at 4 in the morning and I commute. That sign went up after the first denial. And on the front door, it said coming soon, Carlo's Pizza. Carlo's Pizza never came because I don't think it was real. I think it was a threat. You know, and that's what it's like to live across the street or down the block from this property. There's a constant threat, and it comes up every few years, and here you are, missing a Little League game to make a presentation over something that's been denied numerous times. So if I'm passionate about it, I got my reasons. It's personal to me. I built my house with my own hands. I didn't get a builder. I spent a year doing it. I raised 3 kids there with my wife. They go to school here. We love this town. We're not going anywhere. But, you know, I'm gonna defend my territory. Like Tom Jennings said, like Ed Liston said, when I bought the property, I looked into the zoning and I knew what was permissible. And I knew what was across the street. I knew it would be developed. It's the yellow, you know, clapboard sided or asbestos siding house. I'm fine with development. I just wanted to adhere to the zoning. If Mr. Sitar wants to get a variance and work with the community to do something that would be satisfactory to him, but also complement the community, I'm happy to sit down with Mr. Sitar, his counsel. Probably doesn't want to do that, but I'm happy to do it. This to me just is too much, too dense, too problematic, and I'm strongly against it. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to comment?
Mr. Mayor, we have a long agenda this evening. Might I suggest that we move, since we're not voting on this evening,
Right.
we can move on from this and try and attempt to move on to the other
It is
agenda
true,
items.
we do have a long agenda, and we have executive session this evening, so, we're gonna keep it moving. I didn't see anyone else who wanted to make a comment, so.
Mayor, before we just close it up, I would, as Councilman said, so, and I'm in favor of forwarding this to the planning board for their comment and review before we do anything further.
Yep, that's it,
Thank you.
okay. All right, so, next up on the agenda is public participation on any consent agenda item. And there are 4 items on the consent agenda this evening. It's to authorize the submission of a recycling tonnage grant application. It's the certification of the recycling taxes paid in 2018, and I can tell you that those were $2,844.45. It's a proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. This is important. And I know we have some people here. And then the 4th part is to approve the St. Mark's Holy Name Society request for an off-premise 50/50 raffle license. The drawing to be held on September 1, 2019. So I would invite, I think that there's some people here on the gun violence that would like to speak. So I would invite you to come up to the podium. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Hello. Can you tell me your name?
My name is Patricia Brennan. Thank you to Mayor Farrell and to the Girt Borough Council for giving me the time to speak about declaring National Gun Violence Awareness Day. My name is Patricia Brennan. I am a resident of Lake Como. My family has owned and operated the Ridgewood House here in Girt at 1 First Avenue and the Terrace. We are beginning our 52nd season.
YouTube.
Coming
Oh, you do?
Friday,
Yeah.
May 24th, Memorial Day, for weekend 23 years 2019. I'm also a member of the Monmouth County group Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Much like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Moms Demand Action is a nonpartisan grassroots movement begun right after the Newtown school shooting in 2012. While fully supporting the right of law-abiding citizens to own firearms, our goal is to reduce the 36,000 deaths every year through sensible legislation, raising awareness, and by promoting gun safety. I sincerely thank you for announcing this proclamation of our National Gun Awareness Day on June 7th. I invite everyone who agrees we can do more to save American lives from gun violence to wear arms on June 7th to help spread the word about the importance of remembering and honoring all victims of gun violence. We also invite you and your families to attend our Community Day of Action on Saturday, June 8th, from 11 to 2 p.m. at Liberty Park Community Garden in Neptune Township. If you'd like any more information about the event or Moms Demand Action, I have a flyer that I'd like to leave here at the Borough Hall, at the school in one of the Borough Hall, please. And, thank you for your time, and if you don't mind, maybe take a quick picture, with the council and some posters that we'd be able to have for our cause.
Okay.
Would you mind? Would someone,
You wanna come back here?
would someone take a picture? If you want to sit there, and I'll just hand out the posters and stand behind you. Would that work?
I think you gotta squeeze.
Where are we pointing to? Where are we supposed to?
The girl in the green black.
Carry us?
Well, we get one more. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, my mother loves it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were welcome. I'll pass them back before. And now one more. Yeah, that.
Would anyone else like to comment on the consent agenda item? Seeing none, I'll go right to the consent agenda. And as I announced earlier, just to authorize the submission of a recycling tonnage grant, certification of recycling tax paid in 2018, which as I mentioned was $2,844.45. Proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be the National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and to approve St. Mark's Holy Name Society request for an off-premise 50/50 raffle license. Any questions on the consent agenda?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Would anyone care to offer a
So
motion?
moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're finished with that. Next up is minutes. We have 2 minutes to approve tonight. One's the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting held May 1st, 2019. Any questions or comments on those minutes?
I had one, Mayor, one small correction. In the May 1st, 2019 meeting, a resolution refund to sewer tap, it just is upon motion, Councilman Foley. I think that should be someone other than Councilman Foley.
Yeah.
You got it the right time.
Do you remember who that was?
I'll have to check my notes.
Okay,
I
check your
don't
notes. But we'll
recall.
change it. when
Yeah,
you-
I just happened to say it.
Okay. Okay, so would anyone care to offer a motion, any member of council?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mayor, I'd like to abstain on his absence.
That's right. You were not in the meeting. Next one is the minutes from the May 8th, 2019 meeting. That meeting was primarily on the library expansion. Any questions or comments about those minutes?
No.
Any member of council care to offer a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next up is open discussion. The council is invited to speak on any subject.
Good night, Mayor.
I do have something because I have been called once by Senator Sweeney's office, and then he called the borough. I told Senator Sweeney's office I did not want to do a resolution on the path to progress. I went to the Path to Progress meeting at the County Fire Academy, and I spoke to Senator Sweeney at length.
Excuse me, what's that? Path to recover, whatever you said.
Path to Progress is the Democrats' plan to solve all the problems in New Jersey, basically. so basically, the primary reason I don't support it is because, it raises the state budget by, 24.72% in the next 5 years. It projects, in 2000, it projects in 2019 a surplus, which I don't know where they got that. But in 2021, we're gonna be short $1,121,000,000. In 2022, we're gonna be short $2,043,000,000. In 2023, we're gonna be short $3,184,000,000. These are in revenues. And then in 2024, we're gonna be short $3.204 billion. Senator Sweeney started the conversation with, has anyone heard of David Teppa? And I said, yeah, and you know, two people who worked for him were in the top 10 taxpayers in the state of New Jersey. And now they're in Florida, where they pay no income tax. So I talked to him, I said, you're short $3.2 billion in 2024. I said, that's gonna be more like $6 billion. Because you're gonna do something to keep the bank accounts in New Jersey. And they're not really doing anything, I don't believe. They're raising the budget 25%, and they're not right-sizing government. And anyone who's been around for the last 35 years knows that government has ballooned. And so I really, I don't support it. And I can tell you another thing, the path to progress has in it that it's going to take every, what their goal is they want to make 1 to 2 districts per county of school districts. And I can guarantee you that if you looked at our rate for our school rate, and you looked at Manasquan's or Walls, your property taxes are going up 25% overnight, at least. Because that's the plan. They're gonna make 1 to 2 districts per county. They're gonna consolidate all K through 5, K through 6, K through 8, K through 9 into one big K to 12 district. And, there are 27 bills in the state legislature this week. And one of those bills eliminates 300 school districts. And Seagirt's one of them, Spring Lake's one of them, Spring Lake Heights is one of them. So I don't really want my property tax bill to go up by 25%. And I think that's a minimum. So, that's why I'm not supporting this. There's gotta be a better way. So, anyway, I'll move on. Anyone else for open discussion? All right. Okay, moving on to old business. Check up here. First up is a resolution. It's an authorization to proceed with the project known as improvements to the Girt Library, new municipal administrative offices, and to award contract with preparation plans, specifications, and other related services to the Goldstein Partnership, Maplewood, New Jersey. He did the presentation on May 8th. He's, basically, his business is exclusively doing municipal type buildings, libraries, police stations, things like that. It's a total cost less the cost of the preliminary work that we've had done, which was $8,850 of $249,000, and that's a project from soup to nuts. I explained at that meeting how we were gonna pay for it. We're gonna sell 2 lots. We shaved the project down a little bit. The total cost for this will probably come in around $3.5 million. We have minimum bids on the lots of $950,000 and $900,000. We've got a $325,000 grant for open space. We've got a $157,000 grant from CDBG, and that might be in question. That's handicap bathrooms. We have, by the end of 2020, we'll probably have at least $200,000 left in the ZOC Sarah Zock bequest. We have $65,000 in the, in the Friends of the Library collections that we've made over the last 5 years. Councilwoman Morris and I visited with Bob Gogren, who's a trustee of the Kerr Foundation, which is Sarah Zock's foundation. We didn't get exactly the news we were hoping for, but he said that there'd be potentially a one-time gift in the fall, and I don't know how much that is yet. But nonetheless, if you add it all up, we're over $2.5 million, and the debt service on an extra $1 million would be about $87,000 per year, and our budget's projected to be around $250,000. So we're still not spending what we're sending Monmouth County, which is $418,000 a year. I also want to let everyone know that I know, and it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, 1/3 of a mil charge us on the library tax. It'll probably come out to $753,000, but we have $1,374,000 in net surplus. That's surplus we don't use in the budget. I'm not going to raise your taxes. So basically what we'll do is we'll use the surplus, keep things flat, and then the following year, the money we didn't use from that library tax accrues back to surplus. And that's the way it works. So just for those who weren't at the meeting on May 8th. So this is to get this project going. Any questions or comments?
I appreciated the presentation. I made some comments, which I also appreciate the comments, and I see the resolution does make the subject to the agreement to be approved by Nick and.
I appreciate your research on it, and we can, we'll get all those things done, and, you're protecting us, and I appreciate that very much.
I'm in favor of the project. I think we should move forward here, and we'll have another chance when the designs are finished to see where we are and where the estimates are going to end up. Thank you.
Mayor, I just had one question in reference to your statement saying that the money from the sale of the lots was going to be going towards the building, the expansion.
Most of it.
I recall, okay, I just wanted to clarify that, because I recall in a previous meeting, you had made reference to money going elsewhere, in particular from what my
The trees.
recollection, the beautification.
Yes.
Okay, I
The
just
trees.
wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to thank, at least at this point, everyone for the efforts they put in. I hope the community sees this as a major improvement. I know there's been some discussion about it, concern about it. Personally, I see it, and haven't changed my mind that I think this could be a major improvement for our community. Beside the expansion of the library, the community room, which is one thing I'm very confident that the community will be able to use. We also need a meeting room. You can see what happened tonight. Speak up, you can't hear us, we can't record it, etc. But secondly, I'd like to, this will be my 3rd year, finishing up my 3rd year as council, and I'm not going to take a lot of credit for it, because I give it to the mayor and Mrs. Carafa and the staff. I'm confident too that the municipal portion of the taxes won't go up with this project. So I hope with that in mind that the community feels confident that this will be a good project to move ahead with. That's all I have, Mayor.
Any member of council care to offer a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Crawford, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Mixell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Morris?
Yes.
Council President Fetzer?
Yes.
Councilman Mulroy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Anthony?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is moving on to an ordinance, ordinance number 5-2019, and this is one we've talked about quite a bit. An ordinance to amend and supplement section 12-2. And that's construction procedure and site regulations, subsection 12-2, spot 2, additional regulations of chapter 12, building and housing in the borough of Girt. This is the public hearing, and what this is it's for the shoring up of properties when they are digging a hole within, that's at least 5 feet deep and 5 foot wide, and I believe within 10 feet. Is that, did we change that?
Yes, we did.
Within 10 feet. And what's happened is, you know, over the years, this has come up several times to me. And in most cases, I would say that folks have been very, very accommodative to any damage they did to the neighbor's property. But in the last year or so, we've come across some instances where they weren't too friendly. So we're gonna put something up that makes you shore up the property next to you so that you don't end up with your driveway collapsing or something else, like your hedge falling apart or something like that. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I would invite the public to speak on this. See, yeah, please come up.
So is it still, if you get your neighbor's approval, that you don't have to
You have to have a notarized sign.
notarize?
Approval with your neighbor, then it's between the two of you. What's happened is we've been drawn in way too much into this. And, but if you have a contract with your neighbor, then.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Pichetti?
I'm not 55 yet, but first of all, I just want to thank, I'm just coming up here to thank you all because we had spoken to Ms. Morris and Mayor Farrell about the situation. There's 3 specific areas in Seeger that I know that it happened to. One is the house, by the way, on 300 Washington Boulevard, Megan Pichetti. One is the house next to me. There were 2 houses built, and Mr. Uzzolino, who took over that property, he had the 2 houses built. His, right, the border there, the whole line of these mature, what are they, cypress trees or something, they all fell in. And anyway, it was his property next to it because he was building the houses, but it was a terrible thing because they went right up to the property. Then also it happened with Lynn Ward, same thing, something happened on her confined there. And then Eileen Konchik had a terrible situation, same thing happened again. So this is just 2 people that I know, and I saw it out my window that it happened next to me. I took a picture, called Wayne, the builder, because he was like, well, you know. So this is just great. So I just want to thank you. That's all. I came up here and thank you.
I'm sorry it took so
Listen to us.
long, but we wanted to get the details right. And a lot of, there was, as you've been to a lot of our meetings, so you know that there's been a lot of back and forth in trying to get it right. And we probably don't have it perfect.
But why it's so great is because this is gonna cause less conflict. People are gonna be happy neighbors, happy town, smiling Seeger. This is all part of it. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to address the council? Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, public hearing is closed. So now we move on to any questions from the council. Would any member of council care for a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. Ms. Crawford, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Mixell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Morris?
Yes.
Council President Fetzer?
Yes.
Councilman Mulroy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Anthony?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is a There's an ordinance, and we talked about this, this is the, ordinance, additional regulations. About 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, we, changed, our ordinance where we did not allow, work to go on Saturdays from July 1st through Labor Day. A request came in, and it's probably, I don't think we can get it in effect this year.
No, we can't.
But the request came in kind of late, and it does take a while to get an ordinance in place. But they wanted to move this from July 1st to Memorial Day on Saturday work. And, this, it has a lot to do with the noise of the machines, the landscaper use, the noise, the builders all getting there at 8 o'clock and taking all the parking spaces, et cetera, et cetera. So, this won't go into effect this year, assuming it gets passed. But, I would like to ask for a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Would anyone in the public like to address the council on this? And what we're simply doing is moving the Saturday work thing from July 1st to Memorial Day. So now next year, you're not gonna be able to work Memorial Day to Labor Day on Saturday.
Do it.
Can we incorporate earlier hours throughout the year?
That'll be on a separate amendment
Well,
on the 8 to 6 on the weekdays. I will poll the council and I will get
there
that.
would be amendment to this.
That would be a different amendment. It wouldn't be an amendment to this. This is an amendment itself.
I would love to see a discussion with everybody in town about that.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, I'd ask for a motion to close the public portion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about this?
This one may, actually, I want to apologize to Mrs. Carafa, because obviously we get this information, but I apologize, so bear with me, because I thought the intent was to have it Memorial Day weekend. As you know, Memorial Day is a Monday, and then you got the weekend, so I think the intent was to start it Memorial Day weekend, am I right? Start it on Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
I think it reads here,
Saturday.
it starts here on or about the public holiday from Memorial Day. Am I right there, Mrs. Carafa?
Well, you are correct about the intention, because it's the Saturday Memorial Day
No.
weekend, there's no work.
No, she has it in here, 2B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2B, accept the provision of service beginning on the Saturday of Memorial Day, so I'm going back to reading class, but, thank you, that's all I have. Yeah, I know. Oh, boy.
Okay.
I have to babysit tomorrow. Go ahead.
That's okay. Any other questions? Would any member of council care offer a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Ms. Crawford, would you please call the roll?
Council Marcel?
Yes.
Councilwoman Morris?
Yes.
Council President Fetzer?
Yes.
Councilman Mulroy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Anthony?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Mayor, I beg your indulgence at this time. May I ask that we take a brief adjournment? Council goes into executive session. We have some attorneys that we need to confer with for a few minutes. We can go into a classroom so the members of the public won't be inconvenienced, but it would give us the opportunity to speak to the attorneys, and then we'll come back and finish the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
I do need,
We temporarily adjourn meeting for executive.
right, we would need a motion to adjourn into executive to discuss pending litigation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I apologize, we're probably gonna be gone for about 10 minutes. We need to confer with our attorneys.